Hi, welcome back to Lakeside Quilt Making Arts. This video is going to be about the Quilt Show's Block of the Month 2024 by Jen Kingwell. I originally saw this quilt when Alex Anderson presented it, I think in December, and my initial thought was, I don't know that I fully understand, Alex, why you're so terribly excited about this particular quilt. And I don't mean any negative to Jen or to Alex, because when I saw the video where Alex and Ricky interviewed Jen, I fell in love with the quilt. Then I got it. I understood. Just as a novice, I wasn't really fully able, I don't think, to appreciate the quilt just by looking at it. I'll try to take these off. The sun's gone behind a tree and I can see you a little bit easier without the glare in my eyes. And that way you can see me and not just my sunglasses, which are clearly reading glasses too. The quilt. When I saw Jen interviewed by Alex and Ricky on thequiltshow.com, I was floored. And it brought to mind for me several goals that I was already trying to achieve for 2024 that were my objectives to achieve in 2024. One of those being just honing the skills I have, increasing the number of skills that I have, which there's a whole lot of them that I need to do that for. I'm still a novice, right? I got a lot of drive and passion, but I'm still a novice, and I got to remember that. So the other thing is that there's a quilt that I had planned to make for my daughter and son-in-law, and actually for my grandbaby. The grandbaby's little yet. I mean, she's months old. But while she was being carried by her mama, I designed a quilt, and it was sort of like Iowa meets Alabama, because the father is from Iowa, the mother's from Alabama, and I was gonna do these Alabama stars and the Iowa star and do this nice blending, and I'll try to remember to insert that picture of that drawing in here. And it was a hand-drawn thing, and I liked the idea of it, so I already picked out fabric for that quilt. And it went into kind of the feel of the 1940s, that which totally suits my daughter. And I was acquiring fabrics for that quilt. But I wanted a child to get here before I designed the quilt for sure. Like, I just, in the back of my mind, I wasn't fully comfortable that that was the quilt I was gonna make. So I was kind of putting it off, and there are other things that took priority. A couple of surgeries and some other people's quilts and that kind of thing. So when I saw Jen Kingwell's quilt, I thought, that is it. That's where those fabrics that I've been accumulating, that's where they need to be applied. So I was so excited when I saw that interview with Jen Kingwell, and I said, okay, I think I need to do that. But I had, all throughout 2023, you know, of course, this quilting thing is new to me. I was looking at people doing block of the months, and I was thinking, why? Like, why do people do that? Like, do you not have your own initiatives? You know, why are you following someone else's lead? I didn't get it. Again, I'm a novice. So all of a sudden I'm getting it, right? It's a sense of community. You can learn things, you can hone those skills, and there's a forum that you can go to and ask questions, and it's just a camaraderie about it, right? So I got more and more excited about doing it. And then when I saw Barbara Black, she was sewing it by machine versus hand. Oh, my heart kind of sunk a little bit, because I was really wanting, you know, to get that hand tutorial. But another part of me is like, okay, it's good to see how it's done both ways, because I want this to be a handmade quilt, hand stitched, hand quilted, hand embroidered, all the things. And then I want to turn it into a twin size quilt for my granddaughter. So when I saw Barbara doing her show, I realized I can participate in that forum and learn from everybody, but it is going to be that they are doing it by machine, where I'm still going to be doing it by hand. At least that is the plan at the moment. And I went to the quiltshow.com to say, I wonder if they've got their templates in. Of course, they don't have them, and I had to figure out a plan B. And I thought, okay, this is another reason why you do a block a month. You have to learn new skills. I need to figure out how to make some templates. And so the wheels got to turning. So, okay, I think that I have stored away some plastic that I could use for making a template at some point. Yes, found it. Okay, how do you do this? Well, Jen Kingwell talks about how she uses a pad with sandpaper on it to hold everything in place so it doesn't move around while you're tracing your template. So instead of sandpaper, what I did is I just used blue painter's tape to hold everything down, and it worked beautifully. I used a very fine point Sharpie pen to outline it, and that worked great, except I did notice that the later on, the inner lines for the seam allowance, transferring that to the fabric is a technique that I still need to figure out. What I ended up doing is the templates. The reason I wanted the templates is because even Barbara said that the templates were very necessary, even though she's doing the machine piecing. Then I heard Jen Kingwell talking about the templates and showing that they have little dots, little holes in them at the intersection points, and that they're just big enough for you to put a pin head through. I thought that's great, because I can then make those little marks, and then I can draw, connect the dots to create my seam lines, which is what I did, and that worked out fine. I still had to figure out how to handle creating the seam line, the stitching line for the seam on the curved pieces. That's a trick I haven't figured out yet. And so I did figure out that the Sharpie will fade, so I went out and to the shop, and I got my heart tool, marking tool, and that worked really well. That stuck. The plastic that I found, I believe, is something I had preserved out of a dollar store pack of cutting boards. I'm sure you've seen them. They're just real flexible little pieces of plastic that you can use for cutting. I like those a lot in the kitchen, but I remember pulling out that transparent one, thinking, I think this would be great for a template. And I'm so glad I did, because it worked out great. I ended up having to use my kitchen shears to cut it. That worked out fine too. And all in all, everything worked out fine. You know, I started off trying to make the hole, those marking holes that I just talked about, those at the intersections. Thought, okay, I know how plastic can go. It can shatter really quickly. So let's start off with a little tiny hole. So I went to my cast off of sewing machine needles and grabbed one of those that was still straight, and used my clapper to kind of push that down in and create like a starter hole. And then I used push pins to kind of make that hole a little bit bigger, and that was not big enough, almost. Thought, okay, I'm just going to go to bed, figure it out in the morning. How do I make these holes bigger that it will accept the tip of a fine point Sharpie? Because I have a good collection of fine point Sharpie pens in different colors, and that's what I wanted to use. I thought that'll be perfect, but I got to get these holes bigger. And it came to me what to do. I'm going to just use a screw, a fine pointed tip of a wood screw. And that's what I did. I went out to the garage and I found a piece of wood, and so I could screw into that. That could be my base that I screw into. It just worked out really nice. The only problem with this is the material, the plastic, is being pushed out the back. So it creates a little bump on the back. And then when you're putting that template down on your fabric, you get a little bit of a rocking motion. So you got to press really hard to get a nice secure ridge where the edge of it touches the fabric, so that whenever you put your pin down against it, you're not getting a wavy line. You're not going under the template or away from the template. So that's just something to be aware of. I know there's got to be a better way of doing this. I did do some searching on YouTube to try to find something, and nothing else came up, but it worked, and I'm pleased with it. So as far as my storage system goes, I think what I'll do is I'll have a Ziploc for the templates for each month, along with the pattern for that month, and then I'll store those inside of a 3-wing binder. I think that'll work out okay, because I want this quilt to be kind of a masterpiece for me. And it clearly is not going to be a masterpiece, but it'll be a piece that I've poured my love into, because it's going to be a slower go. When I did get my templates working. I got my fabrics cut and all that. I sat down to stitching, and it was such a sweet little time to be productive and see this star unit, this center piece of the quilt, come together without the noise of a sewing machine or getting up and down to iron and those kind of things. That was kind of neat. The bonus about that piece of wood I found and the size of it, I think I'm going to turn it into a clapper. When I went into the studio to try to figure out how to finish up these templates, you know, I had a mess and I had to clean that up, you know, left over from the Mars quilt that just, the studio needed a reset, and I did that, and I created a video about decluttering. So that was the last video, if you want to go back and take a look at it. I think it was an inspired moment from Karen Brown, and maybe it will be one that will inspire you as well. Spend 15 minutes, it'll make all the difference in the world in your studio. So I made room to pull out my tools, make my templates, and then it was easy to pull out all my fabrics that I'd been stashing away and consolidate them into one of the big plastic boxes that's going to be just for this quilt. So I did manage to achieve that. I went through all of my fabric stashes and I pulled out all the fabrics that work together color-wise in that genre that suits my daughter and son-in-law and for the baby. I then went about selecting from that stash the fabrics that I would use for that center star in the middle of the quilt. And then taking it to the next level, because I'm trying to make sure I use this to learn, right? I'm not just doing this so I can produce, I'm trying to actually learn. But okay, let's look at the value. Before we settle on any particular ones, let's look at what I've selected. Number one, there are 8 star points, so I divided it 4 and 4, 4 to represent my daughter, 4 to represent her husband. And so we need to have a range of light to dark for each one of those. So I know that if you change those colors to black and white, you can see true value much better than you can when color is distorting the message. And that was very helpful. So I took all of my combinations and I turned them from the color version to the black and white version, and it was very helpful to see that I had an equal distribution, light to dark, on both sets, from his pile and her pile, and that worked out great. I think, you know, I know that's a scrappy quilt, and ultimately that's all you care about. And once you get the whole thing done in scraps, any places where you don't distribute your value as evenly, it's not really going to make that much of a difference, because there's a lot being said in a scrappy quilt. And it doesn't matter if there's a heavy area of color here, of depths of color, saturation here, and brightness here. But with all that said, I do care a little bit, and I want that center star to be as well balanced as possible. So I took time to create a selection for the star points. And then I did the same thing for the little fans that are being inserted in between the star points. But the big thing that I had a problem with was picking out my background color. Oh my goodness. I thought white, I'll just use white. And then I pulled it out and it's just too stark. It's not what I wanted to do. And I played around mentally. I played around with the idea of using a background color that was a deep color, you know, a navy or a fuchsia or, you know, something like that. And maybe that would be gorgeous. Still think it might have been, but that's not the way I went. I played it safe. What I went with was a taupe on white, and I want them to be scrappy. All the background fabrics will be scrappy. I don't have but like 2 fat quarters and then another short piece of fabric that I can use, and that won't be enough. I'll have to get more. I'm okay with the background fabrics being scrappy as well, but they need to be in that genre of taupe on white. So all my selections are made, templates are made. I get to get down to the business of creating this thing, and that's exactly what I did. What night was that? Saturday night, I think it was. And I couldn't stop myself. I had to force myself to go to sleep. I really wanted to continue. It's just so satisfying to see handwork come together. I know that the quilts were originally done just by hand, so I shouldn't be so surprised when a hand-stitched piece of fabric can look really good. but it was so satisfying. I'm telling you, it was so satisfying. So stay tuned. I'm going to be finishing piecing this thing together, and I will show you in another video as it's coming together. This video, I just wanted to talk about the templates. Like, don't let things hold you up. I knew that if I didn't start this block of the month quilt when everybody else did, I wouldn't do it. I would let that be an excuse to not do it. So I didn't want to let the fact I couldn't get my hands on the templates from the quilt show to be a holdup. And then there's the cost factor. I mean, they're $79, and they don't know when they're going to be in. And I didn't want to have a delayed start, like I said. So I just decided to make them, and it worked. But if you have another technique for making templates, let me know. I've seen a technique or two where you make it out of cardboard, or you make it out of freezer paper, layers of freezer paper, but I don't see how that's going to hold up really well. And I can also see where that could create variability in your lines, especially as the more you use that template, and then you're going to be making the template over and over. So I just wanted to go to making it out of plastic. I've seen online that there's a material that's called acrylic template paper or something like that. It looked like it was flimsy. It wouldn't be as stiff as what I ended up using. So again, I'm a novice. You got better ideas of how to make templates? Please post it beneath, in the comments, so that we can have a conversation about it. I got a lot to learn, but what I've learned so far makes me feel good, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying sharing it with you. I hope that it somehow is inspiring to you. So stay tuned. We'll be seeing the block soon, that center medallion, and I am intrigued myself because I don't really know how well it's going to go together when I start putting the background around the whole thing. But we'll get there, one step at a time. All right, my friends, that's it for this video. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you in the next one.